This is Heroes for Freedom. I'm Rick Robinson. James Armistead Lafayette, America's always valiant and selfless hero who loved General George Washington. This untold story is found in our Heroes for Freedom manual series. This particular story is in Volume 2, and this covers what we have identified as our 100 irreplaceable heroes of our exceptional past. Volume 1 is over my shoulder there on the desk. These are available through the link in the show notes, or you can order them through the website from Amazon. What was shaping up to be the most significant battle of the American Revolutionary War was falling into place faster and better than General George Washington could have possibly hoped for. And much of the credit, Washington knew, was due to the skill and loyalty of one man, a slave no less, a man many Virginians viewed as less than human, a genuine hero who Washington knew had every reason to defect to the British side and help defeat his former American slave masters. But in truth, thousands of his fellow slaves, in fact, James knew, had done just that. But not James. No, this was something he would never do. Self-serving betrayal of the country he loved? No. Or even a just desire for revenge against the state of Virginia? No, this was never in his heart. And George Washington knew this. He could see it in James's eyes. This was no ordinary American. For to his bones, James was an American patriot, and he reciprocated General Washington's respect with a genuine love, born of what he believed this American commander-in-chief truly represented. To James, Washington was a prophet, a divinely inspired warrior of God who had offered his hand to James in friendship when he had showed up at the dilapidated, even pathetic camp that Washington called headquarters. Despite the pitiful nature of the Continental Army huddled before his eyes, James knew intrinsically that the new American Republic would go on to change the world. And when he agreed to penetrate British military headquarters, bivouacking and actually dug in the nearby town of Yorktown, he would willingly go into harm's way for his country because it was the right thing to do, regardless of what others were doing or what they thought of him. For James would, with his remarkable skills, deliver General Charles Cornwallis and the British Southern Army he commanded squarely into the hands of George Washington, and do it without the British ever knowing James's true identity. The American Revolutionary War, for much of its 8 years, seemed always on the cusp of a defeat for George Washington and his ragged men. How could the pitifully trained and poorly supplied American Continental Army, backed by a motley American militia, hope to rout the greatest empire in the world, a wealthy, disciplined military juggernaut that commanded the world's largest and finest land and naval forces? Yet, somehow, in the end, America was victorious. Of course, many believed it was due to divine intervention. I believe that. But we would be woefully unjust if we overlook the quiet yet lethal contributions of our American hero we're talking about today, who would take upon himself the names of his own personal heroes, calling himself James Armistead Lafayette. James was born into slavery. His birth date is not known, but was somewhere around 1750 in Virginia. During the Revolutionary War, James got permission from his owner, William Armistead of Virginia, a loyal patriot, to join Washington's Continental Army. He was not forced to do this. No. It's what he wanted. James's keen intellect and native skills, coupled with his perceived lowly station in life, along with the fact that many black slaves were fleeing to British lines. The British, in fact, were promising all blacks their freedom if they would fight for Great Britain. This provided James the perfect opportunity to serve his American cause by penetrating British headquarters as a spy. It's obvious that James was unique, in fact. He was a young man with vision, and he had loved General Washington and the cause, and felt himself to be a patriot. Coupled with his keen good sense and ability to skillfully read and assess those around him, James had excellent knowledge of the surrounding countryside, the terrain, the swamps, hills, rivers, roads, and trails. In fact, he'd grown up in this area. This made him the perfect American secret agent. Washington's close advisor and general, the Marquis de Lafayette, who joined Washington's army from his native France, personally trained and then sent James secretly to infiltrate British Army headquarters, at first commanded by the American traitor Benedict Arnold, who was given the rank of general in the British Army after his defection. Recall, Benedict Arnold tried to betray Washington, tried to get him captured. Washington narrowly escaped. Later, after General Arnold left the area and was assigned somewhere else, the new British commander arrived. His name was General Charles Cornwallis. In the British camp, Cornwallis, a skilled military leader, spotted James's exceptional ability right away. He could see it just like Washington could. Cornwallis assigned him to guide British troops as they moved through the American countryside. James impressed Cornwallis so much, in fact, that he was then assigned to work as General Cornwallis's aide-de-camp, or his personal orderly, at his headquarters, no less. James had perfectly, seamlessly positioned himself to gather some of the most vital intelligence collected during the Revolutionary War. This was dangerous work, though, something that could get you killed very quickly. Right away, though, James mastered the science of spy tradecraft, and he was trained well by Lafayette, who had operated Washington's extensive spy network throughout the colonies, even running the Culper spy network in the New York area. James mastered so well, in fact, this tradecraft that he was never suspected by the British. He was never compromised during his entire period of service. He memorized troop movements, deployments, numbers, and battle plans with precision, and he passed them on to the Marquis de Lafayette through go-betweens that he never actually met. Excellent tradecraft. Lafayette then assessed the intel and delivered it personally to General Washington. Working together, Lafayette became James's closest friend, greatly admiring the black man for his loyalty to the American cause, for his straightforwardness, in his cool manner under fire, under extreme pressure. He was always in mortal danger while operating behind British lines, of course. Like they had done to the patriot Nathan Hale, the British would immediately torture and hang anyone caught as a spy for the Americans. Finally, as mentioned, James overheard Cornwallis's secret maneuverings to escape the encroaching and circling American Continental Army at Yorktown, prior to the Battle of Yorktown. At the same time, proactively, James provided General Cornwallis with disinformation or misinformation that made it appear that Washington's encircling army was much larger than it actually was. It was actually a fraction of the size. This led directly to Cornwallis's determination to surrender to Washington rather than to fight on at Yorktown. With this American triumph and the capture of the British Army, the war was effectively won. Beyond any doubt, James had contributed mightily to that victory. After America's win at Yorktown, British General Cornwallis was visiting Washington's camp. There he saw James standing with the Marquis de Lafayette and George Washington, and suddenly the reality flooded over him, the awful truth. James had been in Cornwallis's camp throughout this whole entire operation, prior to and during the battle, and none of the British officers had ever suspected a thing. The general was thoroughly demoralized. He was flustered as he stood staring at James, who just smiled back pleasantly in his usual manner. Earlier in the war, General Washington promised all black slaves who joined the American cause and fought in the ranks of the Continental Army for at least 1 year that they would be given their freedom at war's end. Technically, however, the slave had to have served as a soldier in battle. James had served as a spy, so at the war's end, the state of Virginia refused to give him his promised freedom. It was, in effect, a catch-22. It was a terrible situation. It was an unjust regulation, obviously, for James had risked his life many, many times. But a regulation nonetheless. James and his supporters were at a loss as how to overcome this ruling. for he had risked his life countless times for the cause as well. And even though James's owner, William Armistead, wanted to grant him his freedom, the state laws of Virginia did not allow any slave owner to free their own slaves for any reason without state approval. James began to believe that he had no hope of ever receiving his promised and just emancipation. Later, however, with the help and support of William Armistead, who was also a member of the House of Delegates for Virginia, and with the official backing of Washington and General Lafayette himself, who heard of James's plight and wrote a strong letter of recommendation in his behalf, in fact, on January the 9th, 1787, the Virginia Assembly granted James his freedom. This was nearly 4 years after the war's end. In honor of and appreciation for both men, for the Marquis de Lafayette and for his former master, William Armistead, and their support and friendship, and James now being a free man, he renamed himself officially James Armistead Lafayette. He was a free American as well as a true hero of the Revolution. He lived many years in Virginia with his wife and children. One day in the early 1800s, the Marquis de Lafayette, now an older man, returned to visit America. As his carriage stopped in a small Virginia hamlet, he spotted the distinguished face of James in the crowd, smiling back at him. Lafayette leapt from his carriage and ran to James, embracing his old friend. They talked for some time about their war adventures, their comrades living and those that were no longer with them, and their always dangerous struggle for American independence. James Armistead Lafayette died in Virginia about 1832 at the age of around 80 years old. A truly remarkable, even irreplaceable American patriot hero. In fact, he is, in our book, a charter member of the 100 irreplaceable American heroes, and though neglected and forgotten, a great warrior who risked his life to save the country he loved. He is truly an American hero, and I hope we never forget. I'm Rick Robison, and this is the Heroes for Freedom podcast.